Welcome everybody to Adobe APAC Live. I'm delighted to be your host. We're here with Bill Hope.
Hello.
We're going to get our illustration on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I hope so.
Thanks so much for coming into the studio.
Hey, no worries. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, we've got so much to cover. Before we get into all the awesome stuff we're going to do, shout out to everyone in the chat room. Joshua, Dan, Lise, some familiar names in there, which is really, really cool.
Hey, everyone.
I think someone mentioned before that they're skipping their studies to watch, stay in school, but thank you for being here at the same time. It's good. So if you'd like to join in the chat, you can. Just use your Adobe ID. You can use the login at the top right-hand corner of the screen, and then you can jump in and you can interact with us in the chat. You can ask any question you want. We'll do our best to answer it. Obviously, most of your questions will be aimed towards here at Bill. It's going to show so many techniques, so do jump in if you can. If you don't have an Adobe account at the moment, that's fine. You can sign up really quickly. It only takes 5 minutes. We're going to be here for the next about an hour, and we're going to cover so much. But before we do any of that, how about we have a quick chat about who you are and what you do, Bill Hope?
Sure. Thank you. So I'm a freelance illustrator. Been an illustrator for about 5 or 6 years now, based in Sydney. So I work on all kinds of different projects. I work on editorial, do a lot of stuff in advertising, do quite a bit of live drawing, and then traditional art as well. So I've been sort of across all different parts of the illustration industry for a short period. But,
keeping you busy, freelancing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I started, I went to art school for about 3 years here in Sydney, and then after that I was with an agency called the Drawing Book Studios, and had a great 3 years with, maybe 4 years with them. And then about a year ago I started with an agency called Jackie Winter. It's based in Melbourne. And I've been with them up till now, and they're fantastic.
Cool. Shout out to Jeremy Wartsman and the crew.
All the guys.
I'm sure you're watching. And thanks for giving us Bill for a short amount of time. And Olivia, make sure you do get back to your studies at some point. But hey, we've got you for an hour, which is pretty cool. I'm really excited to have you here because we've actually worked a bit together in the past, which is how I discovered some of your talent, and that was through when I was involved in volunteering for Creative Mornings. Yep. And we were lucky enough to have you come in and Livescribe people as they talked. You turned it into images. The
Livescribing, it's something. It's one of those parts of my job I just really fell into. I started working with a guy who ran workshops, and started going along to a couple of those. And I'd always been someone who was just like I'm sort of an irrepressible squiggler. I can't stop sketching, and I think he'd noticed that and got me to come and help out a couple of these workshops. And so what I do now as part of my job is go into business meetings or talks, any kind of event where someone's giving a presentation, and I'll sort of create a sort of a visual mind map along with the speaker. So they'll be talking, and I'll be on the side scribbling away as fast as I can, and usually we'll project up on a screen, and you'll sort of see this big picture come to life throughout the talk.
I think we've got an example behind us. I remember with Creative Mornings, we had issues trying to tell people not to watch you doing the screen and focus on the person talking. Yeah,
it can be a little distracting, but you try and keep it interesting. So this is one that I did a couple of months back for a speaker, I think a typographer, Luca, who was at Creative Mornings. And often people will start off sort of telling a bit of their life story, how they got in the industry, and you're just trying to come up with visual metaphors, pictures, little quotes and things to kind of keep up with them as they go along. So it can be a tricky job. It's a little stressful trying to sort of keep up with people, but it's a great way to just get out and see what other people are doing, check out other businesses. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and this is another one. This one was with Benja.
Yeah. He's a fantastic paper artist in Sydney. You should check him out. He's really cool. And he had a great story just about how he turned his sort of passion for making little things out of paper into just like huge productions. He does amazing stuff now. And I suppose there's a bit of a parallel with how I fell into this kind of work with his stuff. And this is another one, Ali McLean, who's someone who had a really interesting career. She started off as a cosplayer and transferred into, I think she does design for video games now. So she was kind of been on either side of the video games industry, and she was great. So that was a fantastic talk. So that kind of thing makes up for about 30-40% of my job now, and then the rest is more traditional illustration stuff.
And I'd imagine it'd be a really good way to network for you as well, because there'd be people sitting in the audience thinking, oh, that'd be great for our meeting, our focus group, or all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And you find yourself in bizarre situations doing it. I've done all kinds of. I found myself in sort of rural Australia at cat food design conferences and things like that.
Wow.
Yeah. I've been to some strange places to draw. But
all those cat drawing skills coming in handy.
Finally, it all worked out. Yeah.
Decades of practice. Okay, great. So just if anyone's joined us in the last kind of 5 minutes, you can join in with the chat. Just log in using your Adobe ID. Come and join the fun. Skip school, whatever. And so, Bill, why don't we talk about what we're actually going to be talking about today? Give people a little bit of a teaser.
Sure.
So maybe we'll skip over to your monitor.
Yeah. So I thought today we'd work on something that's quite different from the live drawing stuff. I wanted to start working on a really big composition and talk about sort of like large format digital art today. So how I go about making really big images in a digital format. And there's a number of sort of tips and tricks along the way of how to put something like that together. So I thought I'd bring along a drawing. I'll show you a bit more detail on this one. So this is a drawing I started while on holiday recently in the UK. And I thought instead of doing a bunch of finished art, we'd start with something that's really in its sort of early stages, and we'll work a little bit about how I start sort of thinking through a composition and start thinking about design and how to put one of these big images together.
Awesome.
So I think I brought along some sketches from that actual holiday, and I was hoping I could show some of those. So I've got a sketchbook here. I think
Great.
We can switch to our sketchbook cam.
We can. Sketchbook cam.
Yeah.
That's great.
So when I'm traveling, I'll often bring along a traditional sketchbook because I like to sort of keep a foot in the digital and analog worlds.
Yeah.
And this was a drawing I was working on. I'll see if I can
Let's slow down. Let's look at some of these amazing illustrations.
So these are some watercolors. I love doing watercolors as well as digital stuff. I often only really find the time while I'm on some kind of holiday. So they end up being a lot of holiday sketches. This is one.
That looks so cool.
Last Christmas. This is a Easter one, obviously, with the bunny. What else have we got here? Got some friends doing a crossword there.
That's awesome.
There's another watercolor there. Let's see if I can find some from the holiday.
Great. While you're doing that, JB asks, do you search people's bios before you start thinking about ideas before the speech? So back to the scribing.
To the live scribing stuff.
Yeah.
A little bit, but to be honest, I was talking to you about this before. Sometimes I find I can almost be sort of like over-cluttered with information if I learn too much about the person. Like if I have too much on my mind going into it, it can sort of distract. So I kind of prefer just winging it, to be honest. Just going in and listening to what's in the room and just capturing, instead of sort of trying to make a document about this whole person's whole purpose, just capturing what happened at that time in the room. And I find that's kind of the best way to do it. And it keeps it sort of a bit more fresh and exciting doing it that way.
Very cool.
Less prep as well. So
less prep work.
Yeah.
Thanks, JB. I really, really hope you like Livestream today.
So a couple more sketches there. I'll show you the sketches for the actual drawing that I want to work on today.
Great.
So this was one I started working on in a city in the UK called Bath. It's a really beautiful old Victorian town, really nice architecture, and they've got some old Roman baths there. So I wanted something that involved a bit of the architecture, a bit of these baths. So I've got all these ideas sort of swirling around in my mind, and I just want to sort of put them down on the page and see how they'll start sort of jamming together. So when I'm working on a composition, I'll often have these different ideas, and I just need one sort of large compositional thread to go through them that I'll be able to tie it all together with. So with this one, you can see I've got this sketch here where you can kind of see I've got this sort of swooping sort of dip shape.
Right.
And once I had that idea, that kind of gave me the foundation to be like, okay, I've got that one central line throughout the composition. I can kind of build on top of that. So I'll often try and establish that in just a sort of quick pencil drawing. But I think if we go back to the digital drawing, I'll show you where I go from there.
So as we're doing our switch, Olivia has a question. So she recently bought a watercolor palette. Which one do you use, paints or pans? And how do you layer colors on each other?
That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a two-parter.
That's a watercolor course right there.
Yeah.
When it comes to watercolors, I like the Schminky brand. It's a German brand.
Okay. So Schminky is actually the brand? It's not like a Schmick brand? Okay.
Oh, no. The brand is called Schminky. I have no idea what that means in German, but they're a fantastic brand of watercolors.
Dust is good.
But, I mean, just start with whatever you have and just do as much as you can. Watercolors are a really tricky medium, but really fun to work with. They're one of the ones that they're very difficult to do finished work with, but they look kind of inherently beautiful whatever you do. So if you're just splashing watercolor around, it's often going to look good. So it's a nice one that way.
Very good. I like it.
Okay, so coming back to the bigger composition. So once I've got a couple of little ideas down, I'll start finessing them into this bigger composition. I'll show you where I actually started on this one, if I get my layers up. So again, in the computer, I'll start with something that's really simple, something that's just getting the major elements. I knew I wanted this sort of bath shape in the center, this kind of archway, a couple of palm trees, this curved stair shape, and a couple of buildings here. So just blocking down the basics, not worrying about any details whatsoever. And then I'll start building up the details based on reference photos that I might have. So working up a couple of little buildings here, until I get to something that I'm a bit more happy with. When I'm making a big composition like this, I kind of like to think of it like almost like a set for a play or something, where you're just laying down the context for something to happen, and then I can kind of, once I've made the space, I can kind of enjoy filling it with narrative elements and characters and things like that.
Right.
And I just really enjoy that process of sort of building on that pre-existing set that I've made in a way.
That's really cool. And that initial sketch, is that something you scan in or take a photo, or do you redo everything back in the digital into Photoshop?
I used to do everything scanned in. I did a lot of scanning. But these days, because I've become so comfortable drawing directly onto a screen, I quite enjoy just starting from scratch in the computer now. I love working that way as well, because once I've kind of like got a few ideas out on paper, you have so much more flexibility to manipulate things and move things around when you're working in the digital space or replicate things, that I feel like it really opens up a lot of freedom to your process in terms of making. So
great.
I enjoy that now. One thing I thought I'd just give you a little tip on how I approach something like this. Obviously, when you're working on a big composition, if it's got a realist element to it, you've got a lot of perspective, a lot of scale going on. So I'll just share with you one little trick that I use to help with that. So won't go into too much of how perspective itself works, but a lot of people, I'm sure, watching will have an idea. It's all about sort of vanishing points in the distance, lines of perspective coming out from that point, giving you a sense of depth in the image. I really like to have this, you can see this sort of star shape that I've got here, and that provides a really good guide for me to sketch along. So if you look at the lines of the steps here, maybe the top of the archway, the lines along there, if we scroll along to the buildings, the windowsills, everything sort of lines up with those red lines coming out from that central star. So that is a really good template to just overlay. I'll just have it on a transparent layer on top of where I'm sketching. And the way I create that is going over to my toolbar here on the side. You got your rectangle, ellipse, line, all that kind of thing. If I choose my Polygon Tool, I'll make a new layer. With the Polygon Tool, you've got all the options to edit that tool on the top. If I go to my little cog here, you can see you can tick a box called star. That'll make it a star shape as opposed to like a hexagon or a nonagon.
Mm-hmm. It's the only thing I've ever used that tool for, is to make a
tessellating shapes. And you can edit the number of sides. So if it was a hexagon, it'd be 6, nonagon 9. So I can make a 99 pointed star basically, and let's choose a slightly more exciting color for that. Let's go with a bright purple star. And I can draw that big shape there, move that around, and that is my vanishing point. And that's just a really easy thing that I can start sketching on.
And do you often start with the the vanishing points with a blank piece of paper as step kind of one, or would you sort of sketch a couple of times and get to that fine line artwork first, and then at what point do you bring in this?
Yeah, most of the time I'll start with a loose sketch. I find that if I drop a tool like a vanishing point in too early, sometimes I find myself following the lines too sort of slavishly, and you start to be guided by the restraints you've put in place for yourself,
right?
As opposed to just being able to sketch totally freely and then refining that original idea using the tools. So sometimes I like to, I often bring the more sort of technical tools in later on the process to refine the thing I've already come up with.
Cool, good to know. We have a question from the audience. Terry Ann asks, is this for a client with a brief or your own artwork yourself, which is...
All right, sorry, I should have said that before.
No, that's good. It's a great question, Terry Ann, thank you.
This one itself is just for me. This is something I'm working on in the background, but all these kind of tools and approaches I've definitely used for commercial jobs. So after I've shown you one more thing, I'll show you a job I recently did for Sydney Children's Hospital, and that was a commercial job using a lot of the same kind of stuff.
Yeah, very good. Thanks for the question, Terry Ann, and everybody else.
Just while we're on perspective, I'll just show you one thing I also do that just sort of speeds up the drawing process with this kind of thing. Say I've got a building like this that I know I need to match to a certain kind of perspective. Instead of having to sketch each individual thing in line with that, sometimes I'll just start sketching away. So I've got a new layer here I'm drawing on. I'm holding down the Shift key for anyone watching at home. Get those nice straight lines.
I did have a Wacom tablet for several years before I worked out that holding down Shift actually helped you craft a straight line. So.
So I'm just drawing a really quick window here. So that's looking all right. What I can do with that is just select that window, press V to get my transform controls up. Some other hotkeys are Alt-Shift is a way to duplicate within your layer and multiply things. So I've got 3 windows there. Then what I can do to match those up with the rest of the perspective of the drawing is I can select it, right click. Oh, sorry, let's get our transform controls up. If we move it a little bit, you can see if I right click on it, we've got perspective warp. So I click perspective, and then I can just pull on the little tabs on the side to get it. I can make it bigger or larger on either side, bring it up or down, and I can match that perspective there. Ooh. Press enter, and we're all good. And now we've got some windows that line up with the rest of the drawing. So that's just a speedy way to sort of get things in perspective.
It's a nice little efficiency tip.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of, because I'm drawing all day, I always want to be sort of like, I'm a big proponent of sort of speeding up the process as much as possible. But it is one of those things that can become a little bit dangerous if you do it too much. You can sort of start to... if you're trying to make everything more efficient, you sort of get into a process of thinking efficiency before the form itself.
Right.
So you're just trying to speed up the process as opposed to thinking, what's the best window I could be making? Should this one have a different kind of drapery or a vine or something on it? Instead of, you become process driven as opposed to creatively driven.
Okay, so sometimes tool. Good to know.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I want to start adding the idea over today and hopefully next week when we'll be coming back to do another one of these is to populate this sketch that we've started with hopefully some fun characters, and I want to kind of make a parade that's going to travel through this image. So before we get into coming up with some characters, hopefully there'll be some suggestions from the people watching.
Yeah.
I'd like to go to one other file and show you an approach that I use for making really large compositions. So let me just go across to this one here.
Very good. Wow. So this is another piece of work.
Yeah. So this is one of an illustration that I did earlier this year for Sydney Children's Hospital, and this was for their Gold Appeal fundraiser. And they commissioned this work that went in their foyer. So this is a good example of a digital work that's designed for scale, really. So I mean, this is a cut down version of that drawing, but you can still see there's a huge amount of detail going on within it. So the file that I ended up working on with this image was It was 150 dpi, so it was a little cut down in terms of resolution, but it was 6 meters long. So it's a giant file to be working with, and something that's really going to slow down any computer. Even though I have quite a high-powered one at home, it still wasn't sort of getting through it at the speed I want. So I had to come up with a number of approaches to make this a manageable project to work on. So one thing I started doing was, after I'd come up with a original design for this and it had been approved by the client, when I started working on it, I decided to break it into little sort of manageable chunks that can be pieced back together into a large composition. So I used a functionality within Photoshop called linked files, which is basically a way of linking two separate PSD files. So when one's updated, that file will appear as its updated self in a different file. So if you look on my over here on my layers, I've got birds, kids, doctor, bird 2, bed, kangaroo. So each of these sections, if I move one around, is a separate file unto itself. So that's a separate PSD that I can work on, and then drop those into the final composition. And the great thing about that is that I can work on a smaller element in a separate file, and I never have to move it from the main composition. It'll just update there, and therefore I'm using a lot less processing power because I'm working on a smaller element that's updated to this huge composition that otherwise would be incredibly laggy and slow to work on.
Yeah.
So if I open up one of the sections that we had there, so this is a crocodile from the larger composition.
I like the frog up there. He's super cool.
Thanks,
hanging on for dear life.
Yeah, with a little spinny hat.
His little hat.
So there was a question before about a personal job versus a commercial job.
Yeah.
This one being a commercial job, you really need to set it up to, you have to expect feedback and suggestions from the client. You always have to be able to respond to the brief as it goes on. And this is a great way to keep a big project flexible, which is a really important thing in terms of, I'm sure every working illustrator has had an experience of putting lots of effort into something, and then being asked for some small change at the end, which requires a huge amount more effort.
So it's
understood.
It's a small sounding change for them.
Yeah.
It's like, instead of a crocodile, can it be a flamingo or something? You're thinking, well, that took, But if it's something small, you can kind of mitigate some of those changes.
Yeah. So over time, you learn to try and design your files to be adaptable over time. Right. So with something like this, the client says, I don't like green crocodiles. I'd like a blue crocodile or a purple crocodile. So I can make that change quickly in this file. I don't have to worry about all the lag that would go with.
So you just have a mask set up there and you're just changing it in the adjustments?
Yep. So I just duplicated the mask and have changed the adjustments, and then say we give him a little witch's hat with a feather coming off, I don't know, it's not a feather, ribbon, whatever. Anyway, we make our little changes to our crocodile.
I'm glad that both the animals have hats now.
Yeah. You don't want one to feel out of place. Then I just save that file, and then hopefully if we go across to window, then all the updates have been dropped into the final file.
That's pretty incredible.
And especially when you've got something like this that has a lot of painting, a lot of brushwork in it, you really want to be able to for the computer to process things as smoothly as possible, so you can keep a pace going. A lag for an adjustment layer or something's okay, but a lag while you're painting just can really slow down. So you actually
have like a physically lag, like you're kind of doing this and your computer's just trying to comprehend everything in one go.
Yeah. So something like this just really makes that functional.
Very cool tip.
Cool. So coming back to our composition that we're working on before here, I thought we'd start trying to add some elements in, and we might use that linked file process to have those elements.
Very good. And just before we do that, to give your voice a break as well, if you're just joining, sign in using your Adobe ID, and you can jump in and interact with us in the chat. Jackie W said, "Bill's so good. Can you add some of the Jackie Winter team to the parade?"
Oh,
which is a pretty interesting suggestion, and that's the sort of suggestion we're looking for. So, what we'll do is we're going to spend about 10 minutes kind of showing the process, and then we're going to ask you guys what you think we should put into the parade. So it could be an animal, probably a figure, some sort of creature, human, and that's a great suggestion. So we'll give you kind of the next 10 minutes to have a think about it. So have a think and throw in your suggestions, and we'll pick one and we'll make that part of the artwork.
Okay, sure. I'll see what I can do with the Jackie Winter reference. All right.
So, but I digress. So we go back and so you have kind of one that you've prepared earlier that you were going to show us kind of the process of how you add your first asset.
Okay. There was something we were talking about before, but I think would be interesting to add in. So
great.
When I'm adding a bunch of elements to this, it's nice that it's flexible the whole way through, so you can be dropping things in, adding stuff into it. But I really want to keep in mind the whole composition of the image. So I've got some really loose little sketches that I was working on. Let me just get rid of that perspective. And let's find our... Okay, let's just drop the opacity so we can see what we're working with. So say I've got some giraffes, a couple of horses, some people down here, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to try and be sketching things that sort of match a sort of greater flow to the composition. So if I imagine if you look at the buildings and this dip that we've got going on, it kind of follows this greater path like that. So I'm going to try and keep the elements of interest within that kind of greater flow of the composition, just so while I can get lost in the details further in, if this is going to be printed on a wall or on a big canvas or something like that, once we sit back, I want it to feel sort of visually cohesive by the end of it. So I'm just going to try and keep that in the back of my mind.
And do you ever do that? Do you ever like stand really far back and kind of or zoom really far out and just as you're working to?
Yeah. I mean, my thing that I use constantly is I'm sure many people know this, but if you're working in Photoshop, if you hold down Z, which will bring up your zoom tool. If you just hold down Z and move to the left or move to the right, that's scrubby zoom, which you can have selected on the top window there. And that is something I use constantly. Sorry, it can be a little jarring to the eyes, but I'm constantly zooming out, zooming in, zooming out, zooming in to give myself that context. So always trying to keep that in mind. Some people will use the Navigator Tool, which you can see down the bottom here.
Right.
And that'll always give you an overview. Some people will almost like duplicate the window and have that on the side. That's also a good way of doing it.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm just always zooming in and out.
Yeah, scrubby zoom.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So let's get rid of that. Get rid of those sketches.
Just before we did, Terry-Ann asked the previous image that you showed, the commercial image, about how long did that take?
Oh, that was a crazy one. I had a deadline for printing, so it needed to it was printed on vinyl to go on the wall. So I only really had, involving a bunch of other commercial projects, I only had about 2 weeks to turn that one around.
Really?
So I was doing that. There was just a lot of late nights involved with that one. So, yeah, that was a tough one.
Oh wow! Well done. There you go. Don't try that at home.
All right, so yeah, we're going to start working on the first character. So I think I'll just show you a little bit of my approach to sketching up a new character.
Cool.
I have got a pre-existing sketch here that we'll have a little look at, but maybe we'll start something from scratch, just get a sense of it. So I wanted this sort of character on a horse here. But if I'm starting from scratch, I'll just get my standard brush. I just use the most basic Photoshop brush, because when you're sketching like this, it doesn't really matter. So I'll get a sense of, I want a horse about yay big. I won't worry about reference or anything at this point, because I've got a general idea of what the horse will look like. Maybe just getting the basic lines of the character down. Say it's going to have a hat, and it's going to have a bit of a, I don't know what you'd call that, some sort of lead. Sure, there's a horse term.
Reins?
Reins, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so if I do that today, I've done a really good job.
Then I'll often have some reference within the Photoshop file that I'll be using to make sure I get my anatomy, all that kind of stuff right. We were talking a bit earlier before about how I use reference. I like to have it available, but not something that is going to guide my process too much. Right. So some people will do a lot of tracing in their work, and that's a very legitimate way of building up a character. But I sometimes worry that if I'm doing that too much, I'm restricting some interesting creative choices that I might make if I were to do it myself. So as much as I can, I'll keep it within view, but not sort of overpowering the character that I want to work on.
Yeah, great.
So I would just start sketching. Say I'll take some anatomical reference, make sure I get these edges right, and I'll just be working up part of the horse. Let's work on the head a little bit, get a little bit of sense of what this guy could look like. And I'll just keep it really rough, try and work as fast as possible to sort of knock it out. It's not necessary to work fast, but I prefer to sort of keep a good flow going at these early stages. Not getting too lost in the detail. And then what I'll often do is, as soon as I've got something where it's getting a bit busy, I'll drop that layer's opacity way down, start a new one, zoom in, maybe I'll get a finer brush. Let's go to a 5-pixel brush, and then I can start working on top of that. And you can do this over and over and over again to get a more and more refined kind of picture.
So you're sort of like just iterating on your previous quick sketch.
Yeah,
and then kind of slowly adding more detail.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I like to see the sketch underneath because often you'll get the most, because you're the loosest, you'll get a lot of the really good character and interesting elements in that first sketch. So the difficulty is often like keeping the sort of spirit or the excitement that you had in that first sketch and letting that filter down while getting the details correct. So if you want something that is technically accurate but also fun to look at, it's good to try and keep those two bits in mind.
Does that help as well, like with your style, like over time, because you've drawn it that way, you do them all the same way, they'll end up kind of having that like really natural, subjective kind of feel? Yeah,
you hope so. I mean, I've always found style an interesting concept. Because, I mean, when I started out, I used to think like, well, I do this kind of like illustrative loose style and then I do like a cartoon style, but I don't really have my own style. And a lot of people starting out have this sort of identity crisis about not having their own style.
Yeah.
And I was complaining to a friend about it one day about like not having my own style. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, that's your style. And I was like, no, that's when I'm just like normal drawing, you know? And they're like, that's a style. And I just hadn't sort of connected that it's like a handwriting. It's not something you consciously develop.
Right.
But if you're just doing something enough, your own sort of personality will become imbued in it after a point. Anyway, so cool. We're working on that. We finish off the horse. We end up with a slightly more refined sketch than that.
Very good. So this is one you prepared earlier.
This is one I prepared earlier, and we'll go to the more finessed one I prepared earlier. And I thought we'd use the link to file approach with this one to build up this character as well.
Cool. Just before we do, we have another question.
Great.
By the way, the suggestions are hilarious, but we'll get to them yet. So you're not allowed to look at those yet because we'll just get too distracted. They're great suggestions. It's going to be tough to pick one. Keep them coming through. And but also, Olivia asks, the inevitable question is, what are you actually crafting? What are you using today? What sort of tablet is this?
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So I'm working on a tablet called the Wacom Mobile Studio Pro. Is the name of it. It's become my main work tool outside of the house. I do a lot of traveling around to agencies or traveling for the live drawing stuff. It's really my chosen tool because in my mind, Wacom still has the best pen technology. It's the most sensitive for me. And this device runs full Photoshop, and it's hard to get many devices now that are portable but have some power behind them and run full Photoshop. And that's kind of all the things that I need to do that. So at home I use a Wacom as well, but it's just a Cintiq display, which is one of their big pen displays, and a Mac. So that's my usual setup.
There you go.
Okie dokie.
Very good. Back to the horse.
Back to the horse. All right. So this is the one I prepared earlier. This is a more sort of...
We've skipped forward in detail here.
We've skipped forward
a couple of iterations.
A couple of steps. So I can actually show you, if I bring in my background. So that was the sketch that I had on the drawing earlier. And then a couple of iterations later, we end up with this, which is still a relatively rough pencil sketch, but I've got obviously a lot more detail in there. So the first one is probably like a 5-minute sketch. This one's probably more like a 15-20-minute sketch. And then I'll show you how I turned this into a a finalized sketch.
Cool. Very good.
All right. So the bulk of it I've done to save time, but I thought I'd just show you my process working on the face, the hair, and maybe that little bird on top. So let's keep going. So I've got my sketch layer here. I'm going to just drop that down to, I don't know, 25% opacity. Now make a new layer, and I'm going to start drawing on top. Actually, you know what? Because there was the desire for a Jackie Winter staff member, maybe I will try and quickly sketch out someone from work to add into this character instead.
Great.
So I'm going to start a new face here. I'm just blocking out really simple elements. I don't have any photo reference here, so this is going to be entirely from memory, so I apologize to... I'm going to draw Jess from work. Let's try and do this nice and quick.
We might not know what Jess looks like, so you could just say it's perfect.
I mean, it's coming out much more accurately than I thought now that I think about it. You're right. All right. I'm really kind of rushing through this, but just blocking out the main elements of the face. Again, because this is a sketch, I'm really not worrying about details too much. Just this nice flicky short hair. Yeah, so again, I'm just using the scrubby zoom to zoom in and out, make sure I've got the right kind of approach, and just using that standard loose brush. All right, I might put a little bird on top as well. So not worrying about any of the details here, just keeping it really loose. All right, so let's drop the opacity way back on that. And then I'm going to make a new layer. Taking my brush, I'm going to just a full standard black line. When I'm doing other pictures that are maybe smaller compositions, I do like to play around with more detailed brushes. So in Photoshop, we've got all of these beautiful, nice textured brushes. Yeah. But with something like this, where it's more about the composition, I'm just going to use a standard brush. Right. Because it's going to be looked at from such a long distance. You want the composition, the elements to be the focus themselves, as opposed to the beautiful texture of the line. The texture. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, while we've got that, Karen has a wake on Mobile Studio Pro as well, which is pretty cool. She asks, I use smart objects in the same way that you're using linked files. Do you know what the difference is between linked files and smart objects?
They're very similar.
Okay.
The main difference is I use smart objects to keep things flexible and multiply them, as it sounds like Karen does as well. The main reason I would use a linked file instead of a smart object on one project is that when you're working on a smart object within a big composition, that file is holding all the information of the smart object within that file. So anytime that you're working, all that data is still held within the file. So you get massive file sizes. With smart objects, and with the linked, when I'm working on, say, the crocodile as part of the window piece, the smaller one, I will have closed the other file, and I'll just be working on the smaller file. Right. So I'm using all my computer's processing power just on that little bit. Cool. But they are very similar. You can do a lot of the same stuff with those.
Very good. Good explanation. Thanks for the question.
Okay, so let me get my old brush back. All good to go. Okay. So I'll just be inking this in. Are there any more suggestions that have come through to add to the?
They have. Should we talk through them now? It's not going to distract you too much.
No. Go ahead.
Okay, here we go. Someone let me know if I missed something. I think we're starting with a bumblebee holding a trumpet.
A bumblebee holding a trumpet. Okay, fantastic.
A super happy watermelon.
Okay. Yep.
Told you they were good. A unicorn with donuts on its horn.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
A mouse with a balloon tied around it, floating away.
Okay, fantastic. Those are great.
Yeah, we obviously had the Jackie Winter suggestion, which we could cheat a bit. We're putting someone in here, I think.
Yeah. I think this counts.
This
Jackie
counts.
Winter.
Or a bilby, which is quite cool. Okay. Keeping it Australian, which is pretty great.
All right, so I'm pretty much finished the line mark of the face there. I'll just quickly do in this little birdie at the top. Yeah, it can look quite abstract when you're this close up. It becomes very pixelated, but you just become used to it over time. Okay, that seems all pretty ready to go. So what I'm going to do is, when I'm coloring, I like to mask off the areas that I'm going to be drawing within. And it just is a really efficient process and gives you a lot of flexibility to sort of paint freely within a constrained space of the mask. So I've selected around my lines. A little shortcut here, which is good, is just pressing Q, and that should show me my selected area, which is looking good.
Great.
Then
so that's to show the clipping mask that you made?
Yeah. So that's the selection that I've made.
Great.
So I can just see that, which all looks fine. A process that we might do when I come back next week is something called Photoshop Actions, which is a way of it's almost like coding within Photoshop to run programs, or if you've got a set of steps that you have to do regularly, this is a way of like automating those steps so you don't have to do them all the time. So there's one that I've set up for making myself masks, which we'll go through next time.
We'll do that next time.
I'll just run it now. So I'm just going to tap F4, and I've got my mask for my layer, and now I should be able to get...
Very cool. And yeah, Bill will show you how to do that if you tune in next week.
Yeah.
It's another cliffhanger. You're just going to have to come back.
So you can see now I can just paint really freely within that mask, and I've easily got that area. Sorry, Jess, I've forgotten your hair color temporarily. I'm just going to go with a sort of in-between, sort of blondie brown. So just painting that into my mask now. Might go with a nice bluebird. Another good tip is just the Option key while you're painting for the color selector, which makes things nice and quick.
I held down Option, and that switched the colors. Around.
So you can see the little sort of color detection ring pops up.
Great.
Okay, that's all looking fine. I'm going to select my skin tones there. I'm not going to worry about making a new mask. I'm just going to keep it nice and quick. Select the color that's in shadow. I might get a slightly softer brush. And then I'm just going to paint the shadow from the hat in there. A little bit under the chin, a bit under the nose. It's looking all right. Maybe I'll add just a little bit of a highlight. Okay, that's not looking too bad, and I'll just give a little bit of shading love to that bird. Okay, a little orange to the big. Okay, well, that's all looking not too bad. So what I can do is I can drop out my background. Got my lady on the horse. Let's just save that. And it's a linked file there, so we can drop it into the larger composition.
There she is.
And there she is. And you can see, because this is a much smaller file, it's all crazy pixelated there. But because it's a linked file like a smart object, I'll be able to zoom it way out, and I'll keep all my pixels. So I can work within this smaller file with this little section dropped in, and I don't have to worry about losing all my resolution.
That's fantastic. So the other file that you were working on originally, like that's quite large. So that's a huge file. Yeah, great. Oh, very cool.
Okay.
Got a question just before we move on, and you're going to have the really tough choice of having to pick which one of these.
Sure.
So Matthew asks, I love your style, but he works as a web designer / dev. Do you do much vector work using Illustrator?
No.
Okay. Well, then I don't really need to do the follow-up of the question. So working in pixels.
I mean, to be honest, I just haven't gone into the vector section much. I mean, I've dabbled a little bit in it. I think because so much of my work is about line work and sort of big compositions. Even though you can create really beautiful vector line-based images, you're really focusing on the details, and I think it's just a time management thing. Like, I would much prefer to make 6 figures that I've dashed out in pixels as opposed to like making one beautiful one that's all vectorized that can be blown up. I mean, I have done a bit of vectorizing of stuff, but I prefer to just work quickly, and pixels seem to be the best vehicle for that right now. Yeah.
Cool. Very good. Thanks for the question. a much harder question to answer.
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to add into this thing? There was a final suggestion, which was a sausage with a face.
A sausage with the face. Well, let's knock out the sausage with the face really quickly, and then we'll work on something a bit more.
So we're going to do two?
Yeah. Okay, sausages. I don't think I need any reference for, so we're just gonna just have this guy here. He's going to be a bit cartoony, little top and bottom. All right, and we'll just make this super happy guy quickly.
Super happy.
All right. What were the other suggestions?
Very good. Well, we did the last one, so why don't we do the first one, which was the bumblebee holding a trumpet.
Bumblebee holding a trumpet. Okay, no worries. So if I think back to...
Actually made me laugh with that one.
So this is some of the other ideas. So I'm just going to kind of start to think about where my bumblebee with a trumpet would go. So sort of thinking about the greater flow of the composition again. I think something kind of up... we're thinking about those lines of the composition. I think something up kind of amongst the palm trees might be nice. So often I will start by just Googling
Careful.
Sorry, jeez. So let's not go for the Transformers bumblebee, but let's find something a bit more. Jeez, there's just no bumblebees these days.
Wow.
They're all robots.
There is a new Bumblebee movie out. I think that's probably not helping our SEO.
Maybe I'll just go B. Okay. I know bumblebees. That's a bumblebee, I think. So let's get a little bit of reference. Drop that in. And again, I don't want to be sort of devoted to the reference. I just want it there as a bit of inspiration to what my bee is going to be. So I did see some bumblebees while I was over in the UK recently. They are just... Have you ever seen them before?
No.
They're enormous. They're like this big.
Oh, really?
And they're really cute and fuzzy. I mean, it's like they're all wearing woolen jumpers. No, they're great. Okay. Luckily, I am an ex-trumpet player, so...
Oh, wow. I thought trumpet would be the hardest part.
Oh, no. I can do trumpets all day. So let's just work a little bit of this in. So again, I'm just working as fast as I can. Get a couple little legs out here. I'm going to try and think about the movement of this bumblebee. So the legs are coming out behind a little bit. Let's make it cute with some tiny little wings. And I'm a big one for sort of anthropomorphizing. So let's give him some big puffy cheeks as he's playing the trumpet. Insects like this are tricky because they don't have any pupils, so you can't get them looking in one direction. So they always look a little bit dead in the eyes. So you can either cheat it or just go with the dead insect eyes. That's looking all right. So what I might actually do is I might just select that, and we'll do the. Let's make a new file. Whoa.
It's a really little bumblebee.
It's a really little bumblebee, but we can scale this one up a little bit. So I'll just get my image size. That's Control-Alt-I for anyone watching at home.
Well done. That was my next question.
So let's scale it up to about 3 times the size, but it's still a relatively small file. So we can work on this guy. Drop the opacity back so we can start to work on him a bit more. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save him. If I go to my desktop in the live stream, let's save him as B. Save. And then if I go back to my main file, what I'll do is I'll link this one in now so we can just see how that works. So let's go File, Place Linked. I can go to my folder, grab my BPSD, just go Place. Oh, all right. And so you can see he's quite a lot larger now.
Big B.
Big B. Let's bring him down to his normal size. Now, hopefully, if I just draw something on top of that and go save. All right, so we can see that the file's linked and is updating, which is good.
Cool.
All right, so let's just finish off this B.
Very good. So this is sort of step 2. So you've done the sketching out really quick. You've got an idea of the form, function, and you're going to just step 2 of the detail. Yeah.
Should we do one more sketch or
yeah, sure.
keep going with this one?
I think we've got time. You want to add one more in?
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like I'm choosing now.
Sure. Whatever comes along.
Well, just because I'm suggesting it. I really like Super Happy Watermelon, but I feel like it's going to look a lot like a Super Happy Sausage. I think I saw Bill's ears prick up a little bit when I said mouse with a balloon tied around it floating away.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, that sounds like a good one.
Okay.
I think with this, we're going. It's becoming a bit cartoony, so I'm not going to worry too much about any photo reference for this one. I think I'll just try and wing it. So again, zooming out, thinking about my composition. Let's zoom in. Got a new layer here. Get a balloon coming up here. Bit of a waggly line. All right, and let's start with our mouse.
So you're doing the mouse by memory?
Yeah, I'm going to see how I go. I mean, I don't think I'll be able to get a super accurate mouse, but something that's close enough. So I've got little legs flailing behind here. Got some tiny little hands coming down. I might go super cartoony, so the big googly eyes on this one. And big nose, of course. And maybe some big scared teeth. This one's getting really tiny. So I might just scale him up a bit.
I did miss a question previously, which was from was how long have you been drawing for since you could walk? So I think they're saying that you're pretty quick with the skills there.
Right. Yeah. I've always been drawing. I think I only really seriously started drawing probably. I had 3 siblings, so there was lots of sort of competition, and I think when I found myself just edging a little bit ahead with drawing, I thought like this could be my thing.
Oh, this is your identity.
This is my identity.
Yeah.
So that was probably 8, 9-ish, something around then, and then it's been pretty solid since then.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. I think I might go on to a second layer with this guy. So on the Wacom, I've set up. You can pre-program these little buttons on the pen.
Right.
So the right click's the right click. So for changing my brushes, but I've set up the upper click as a shortcut to my foreground color picker, and I find that a really quick efficiency thing for being able to change my brushes, change my color super quick on the go.
That's cool.
All right, so let's again. I'll bring down my pixels to a smaller size, and start working a bit more detail into this guy. All right. So yeah, hopefully people come through with some sketches for next week that I could sort of workshop in, and if anyone has any questions about sort of techniques or approaches, maybe we could do a little deep dive into some kind of shading or line work or anything like that people would be interested in.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. Yeah, for sure. Maybe you guys could tell us now in the chat. What would you want us to dive a little bit deeper into? Could it be perspective stuff?
Yeah.
Shading, the coloring, pretty much any aspect of what you do, I guess.
Cool.
That would be great. And there was some really great suggestions in there, everyone. So maybe we'll pass them on to Bill and we'll see what makes it in when we come back and do part 2. Because we'll have some time to be sketching about.
Yeah.
So we'll hang on to them. So if you weren't picked, don't feel too bad.
Oh yeah. I'll try and find some time to add in a couple more before we come back next week. So
and if you don't, we have time on the show too. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Great. But yeah.
I'm loving this mouse. Cool. How many times have you drawn a mouse before that you can just do this off the cuff?
How many times have I done mice? Probably a few. I'm trying to think if I've done like a mouse job in the past that's required lots of mice coming together. I mean, after you've drawn like a certain number of mammals, you start to find like there's a lot of similarities. So sort of how the leg bows, like that's quite similar to like dogs and pigs have quite a similar kind of thing as well.
Right.
So once you get a few animals under your belt, they start becoming a bit easier, the anatomy.
Cool.
Like I've always struggled with horses. And once you get a bit of a horse, they're kind of like giraffes, so that becomes a little bit easier as you go along as well.
I feel like you've nailed horses.
Oh really? Okay. I had a friend.
Looks amazing.
Well, there was always one person in primary school that was like into horses, so got really good at horses.
Right.
And I could never do it. And I found out that one of my friends was that horse person a couple of years back, and she, in a slightly cruel way, bought me a How to Draw Horses book for sort of 5-year-olds, and I took it way too seriously and spent ages working on my horses to get them there.
That's great.
All right, that sketch is probably where I think it needs to be at before I went on to inking. So
that's excellent.
So I can keep going with that.
And we'll probably wrap up in the next sort of 5 minutes. So if you do have any other kind of passing questions for Bill today, obviously you can join us next week from 2 o'clock. But also, just if you have any questions about what you saw today, any of the techniques, any suggestions that you might want to hear next week, we'll see if we can work it into what we're going to cover. You mentioned actions, which sounds super interesting.
Yeah. This is something I've only very recently figured out, so it's quite new to me as well.
Cool.
Did you want to go through any of those?
No. I think we'll stick that to next week. Because I'm aware of actions, but certainly not for illustration. More for like exporting files, exporting assets to the web. Kind of before XD came around, when a lot of us were using Photoshop to export assets and things like that. In the same vein as like batch processing and things like that. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I suppose with illustration, because you're working with so many unique elements and you're not having to sort of apply similar filters or crop in a certain way to certain things, it's not as applicable, but still there are lots of things that I'm sure are different it's a really great tool to know, because everyone's process is really different. Yeah. And everyone will have one thing that they have to do over and over again. So any way to kind of speed that up is great. Yeah,
absolutely. And thanks for sharing so many tips with everybody in there. Terry's interested in hearing more about the inking, which is really cool, because we'll cover that a bit.
And it's also Inktober right now, so shout out to all the Instagram people. Illustrator Instagram goes crazy during October. Everyone comes out with all their ink drawings.
So is Inktober what it sounds like? People do a lot of ink drawings?
It's just a hashtag that everyone starts drawing on paper again, basically. Right. So it's a thing. So maybe I'll have to bring in some for next time. Cool. But yeah, I mean, when I started out, I did a lot of these big compositions on paper. Maybe I'll bring some in for next week. And I was using just tiny little paintbrushes, inking them in. Right. So I think, because I have quite a big background in that sort of really analog, sort of traditional style of ink drawing, I've really wanted to bring as much of it as possible into digital work and making sure the line work is good there as well, because there is lots of nuance that can be lost in using digital brushes and things. So we could definitely focus on that a bit.
Super cool. Well, thanks everyone. So I'm also just going to quickly explain how you can add your illustrations to the parade. So the best thing to do is we have a Dropbox link that will show up soon. We're going to put it down the bottom. If you're watching the live stream, it should come up around now or in the next minute or so. We'll also leave a link to that Dropbox in the team chat. And all you need to do is just drop your Photoshop file in there, and Bill will take it from there. Anytime sort of between now and when we go live, we'll probably be monitoring it. If you do it right as we go live, we might miss it. So see if you can get it in the day before or something like that. And then we can kind of have everything ready, get it over to Bill. Look, there's a link there. And also, if you don't want to upload a Photoshop file or anything like that, just a JPEG if you would prefer to use a hashtag. The hashtag we use for the show is Adobe APAC Live. So if you just use that, we'll keep an eye on that hashtag as well, and we might pull in an asset or two. Maybe Bill might play with it in there, and we'll see if we can kind of get your creation as part of the parade.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone has any questions just about sort of being an illustrator or working or anything like that, definitely send those through as well. And
where can people find you? So that's definitely a question for you, because I'll be useless between now and then with answering any of those specific questions.
Sure. So people can look up my Instagram. It's probably the easiest place to find me. So I'm just at BillHope_art. Cool. So you can find my Instagram there, or if you Google me, you should find my website. And I think my email's on there as well. So feel free to get in touch with any questions about that kind of thing. Yeah.
And if you're watching this replay somewhere else that isn't on here, you need to go to www.Adobe APAC Live, and that's where you'll find the links for the Dropbox, and our hashtag is on that page as well, which you can use to submit your artwork. We'd love to see what you guys come up with, and we will be back this time next week, so that's 2 p.m. 1 week from now, and we hope you can all join us.
Yeah, fantastic.
And thanks so much for coming on, Bill.
No worries, no worries.
Awesome.
All good.